The mahogany door clicked shut behind me, sealing me in a world of gilded expectations. Patricia Whitmore's face performed a strange contortion, part smile, part wince, as if she'd tasted something sour while holding a camera-ready grin. Her eyes conducted a slow, dismissive inventory. My simple navy dress, my modest flats, the drugstore earrings. I watched the mental arithmetic flicker behind her gaze, the total coming up decisively short. She leaned toward Marcus, my fiancé, and her whisper, meant to be private, reached me with perfect clarity. She looks like the help who wandered in the wrong door. That's when I knew the evening would be revealing. My name is Ella Graham. I am 32 years old, and I have a secret, not a small one, like blaming the dog for eaten pizza, not a medium one, like a childhood stuffed animal in my bed. My secret is that I make $37,000 a month. I am a senior software architect, a patent holder, a speaker at international conferences. My stock options could make your eyes water. And for 14 months, Marcus believed I was an administrative assistant barely covering rent. I never lied. When we met, he asked what I did. I work in tech, I said. He nodded. Scheduling for the executives? He guessed. I gave a vague smile. He filled in the blanks, and I never corrected him. Why? Because of my grandmother. She raised me in a modest home, teaching me that character isn't forged in luxury, but revealed in its absence. When she passed, I learned she was a millionaire. In her final letter, she wrote, "A person's true character shows only when they believe you have nothing to offer. That is when you see who they really are." So when Marcus brought me to his parents' estate, hinting this dinner was a serious step, I made a choice. I would give the Whitmores my grandmother's test. I would arrive as the woman they expected, unassuming, ordinary, and I would watch. The estate was a caricature of new wealth, a needlessly long driveway, gold-accented iron gates, lawns trimmed with surgical precision. My 12-year-old Subaru felt like an artifact on display. Marcus greeted me with a kiss that felt staged. His eyes flickered over my outfit, and I saw it, a flash of embarrassment. I filed it away. Inside, Patricia held court in a foyer dripping with crystal and gilt-framed prints. Her handshake was limp, cool. After her "help" comment, I merely smiled. The performance had begun. Dinner was a symphony of condescension. 6 forks framed my place setting. Patricia noted my surprise with faux sympathy. My grandmother taught me it's the company, not the cutlery, that matters, I said. Her smile tightened. The interrogation unfolded between courses. My small-town upbringing, my late parents, my support role in tech. Vivian, Marcus's sister, arrived late, draped in diamonds and disdain. Their father, Harold, was a quiet, weary presence. Another guest, Richard Hartley, watched me with a puzzling recognition. Then, they introduced Alexandra, Marcus's ex, the daughter of luxury car importers. Such a perfect match for our business. Patricia sighed, her eyes drifting to photos on the wall where a radiant, dark-haired Alexandra stood linked with Marcus. Vivian twisted the knife. She's still single, almost like she's waiting. I smiled. She sounds remarkable. My calm through them. Patricia leaned in. I hope you won't feel too out of place, given your modest background. What do you mean by modest? Her smile turned sharp. Some are born to certain advantages, others live ordinary lives. There's no shame in being common. Common. The word hung in the air. Marcus finally spoke, weak, defending his mother's protective intent. The real Marcus was fading before my eyes. Later, seeking a moment alone, I passed a partially open door. Patricia and Vivian's voices slipped through. Deal with this quickly. He can't make this mistake. The merger with the Castellanos depends on Marcus and Alexandra. The dealership won't survive without it. My breath caught. This wasn't just snobbery. It was financial desperation. Marcus was supposed to keep Alexandra interested. This secretary is a placeholder. A placeholder. That's all I was. Vivian's laugh was cold. At least she's too stupid to suspect anything. Grateful. Probably. I stood in the shadowed hallway, my shock hardening into a cold, clear resolve. They thought I was naive, trusting, stupid. They had no idea. I returned to the sitting room, my face a mask of calm. The furniture had been shifted. An air of staged ceremony filled the space. Marcus, sweating slightly, took my hands. "I know my family is a lot," he began, then dropped to one knee. The ring was large, flashy, and poorly made, like a prop. "Will you marry me?" Patricia's eyes gleamed. This was their plan, a public engagement to pacify me, a scandal to discard me later, clearing the path for Alexandra and the merger. I could have said no, I could have walked out. But they'd gifted me the advantage of surprise. I said yes. The false congratulations bubbled around me. Marcus slid the cheap ring onto my finger. Across the room, Richard Hartley caught my eye. His knowing look suggested he saw more than the others. I held his gaze, and a silent understanding passed between us. In the cold driveway, Marcus kissed me goodnight. "They'll warm up to you," he promised. I drove away, the gaudy ring heavy on my hand, a plan crystallizing in my mind. The next morning, I began my real work. My profession is built on finding systemic weaknesses, and the Whitmore empire was ripe with them. Deep financial troubles, a failing franchise agreement, and Vivian, her embezzlement was a trail of digital breadcrumbs, hundreds of thousands funneled into her lavish life while the business crumbled. I documented everything. Then, I made calls. My grandmother's name still opened doors. One connection led me back to Richard Hartley. The Whitmores had cheated him years prior. He was waiting for his moment. I would need an ally. The following weeks were a masterclass in acting. I played the delighted fiancé, enduring Patricia's barbs and Vivian's sneers. Marcus grew more distant, guarding his phone. When Alexandra flashed on his screen, I didn't react. One night, I told him I was working late. Instead, I watched from the street as he sat with her in a quiet restaurant. Their heads were close. He held her hand. She laughed and touched his cheek. I took photos, not for evidence, but for remembrance. The game was set. They had underestimated the help, the common girl, the placeholder. Now, it was my turn to make a move. The photographs weren't about evidence. They were about memory. To crystallize the man Marcus Whitmore truly was, not weak, not just his mother's pawn, but an active architect of the deception, weaving two relationships while his family pulled the strings from the wings. The rage was a clean, white fire, but I let it burn in silence. I didn't confront, I compiled. The images joined the growing dossier on my desk. My meetings with Richard Hartley continued in discreet corners of quiet cafes. He provided his own trove of documents, shady deals, squeezed partners, the Whitmore's ethical shortcuts spanning decades. He was a willing ally, but he needed to know my motive. "This is personal for me," he'd said, tapping the file between us. "But for you? Is this just revenge?" I considered his question under the cafe's low light. "No," I said finally. "It's about exposure. They operate on a simple calculus. Money grants immunity, and people are disposable assets. They're teaching Marcus to do the same. If they aren't stopped, they'll keep doing it. Someone needs to show them their money can't buy consequences." Richard studied me, then gave a slow, approving nod. "Your grandmother would be proud." In that moment, I knew my path was right. The engagement party loomed in 3 weeks, Patricia's grand showcase, a coronation of her perfect family. I used every day. Richard and I coordinated. I placed strategic calls. I even spoke with the automotive manufacturer's regional head, who listened with grave interest to what I'd uncovered. The night before the party, I gave Marcus one final door. We were at his apartment, reviewing mundane party details. I let the conversation lull. "How do you really feel about our future?" I asked. "Excited," he said, the words smooth and rehearsed. "I can't wait to marry you. Is there anything you need to tell me? Anything at all?" His blue eyes held mine, earnest and empty. "Nothing. You're everything I want." "What about Alexandra?" A flash of panic, instantly smothered. "An old friend, that's all." I simply nodded. The door had been held open. He chose to stay in his lie. The following evening, I dressed in my own armor. The emerald designer dress, my grandmother's flawless diamond pendant, the watch that spoke a silent language to those who understood. I looked in the mirror and saw not a pretender, but myself. The performance was over. The Whitmore estate glittered under a canopy of temporary chandeliers. I arrived in my Subaru, handing the keys to a valet who glanced at my car. Then my gown, in utter confusion. The walk to the main tent was my unveiling. I shed the invisible cloak of Ella the Modest with every step. The reaction was a wave I rode with calm purpose. Harold's welcoming smile faltered into bafflement. Society wives whispered behind champagne flutes. By the time I reached Patricia's circle, the ripple had become a tremor. She turned, her cream-colored gown suddenly looking costumey next to mine. Her frozen smile shattered into pure, undisguised shock. Ella? Her eyes raced over the dress, the pendant, the watch. Where did you? Just a few pieces I've been saving, I said mildly. Vivian materialized, her attempt at a cutting remark. Is it a rental? Dying in her throat when I named the designer, a man whose atelier she could never access. The confusion in their eyes was the first sweet note of victory. Marcus found me, pale and trembling. What is this? What's going on? I'm being myself, I said, and guided him toward a cluster of automotive executives. I introduced myself properly. Ella Graham, senior software architect, granddaughter of Margaret Graham. I watched their expressions shift from curiosity to recognition to deep, professional interest. Marcus stood beside me, a stranger at his own engagement party. Richard arrived, giving me a subtle nod. The manufacturer's representative was here. The stage was set. Patricia cornered me, her grip vice-like. What is your game? She hissed. There is no game. I simply wanted to see who you really were. And now I know. Before she could retort, Harold's voice called for toasts. The crowd hushed as Patricia took the microphone, her composure forcibly restored. She spoke of family, legacy, and bright futures, her speech laced with barely veiled hints about business expansions and vital partnerships. She was using our engagement as a commercial. Then she called me to the stage. The tent fell silent as I walked up. The spotlight was no longer theatrical. It was forensic. Patricia handed me the mic with a challenging gleam. She expected a blushing speech of gratitude. I looked at the crowd, at Marcus's nervous face, at Patricia's steely smile. Thank you, Patricia. You have indeed given me a warm welcome. I began calmly. I spoke of my first visit, of my decision to show them a simpler version of myself. I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you believed was beneath you. Patricia's smile vanished. I recounted the insults, the help comment, being called common. I described the conversation I'd overheard, the plan to use me as a placeholder, the desperate merger with the Castellanos, the financial ruin they were hiding. Gasps cut through the air. Marcus reached for me. Ella, don't. I showed them the photo on my phone, Marcus and Alexandra, hands clasped across a candlelit table. Taken while you were working late, I said, my voice clear over the rising murmur. I gave you a chance to be honest last night. You chose the lie. Then I turned to the business, the failing franchise, the overextended debt, and finally, I looked straight at Vivian, and I found evidence of embezzlement, hundreds of thousands, siphoned from the company for years. Vivian's shriek of denial was cut off as Richard stepped forward. He handed a thick folder to the stone-faced manufacturer's representative. All the proof is here, he announced. Chaos erupted. Patricia shouted about defamation. Harold sank into a chair, defeated. Vivian's husband stared at her as if she were a stranger. I saved the last act for Marcus. I removed the gaudy, cloudy ring from my finger. I will not be marrying you. I only said yes to give you the rope to hang yourselves. I placed the ring in his limp hand. Give this to Alexandra. She's the business arrangement you actually wanted. I set the microphone down. The sound echoed in the stunned silence. As I walked off the stage, the crowd parted. The carefully constructed evening shattered into a cacophony of frantic whispers and hurried exits. I didn't look back. Richard met me by the fountain in the cool night air. It's done. The franchise is terminated. Do you feel satisfied? I asked. Relief, he said. A long debt paid. He handed me his card. If you ever need anything. I thanked him, drove my old Subaru home, and slept a deep, dreamless sleep. 1 week later, a news alert buzzed on my phone. Whitmore Automotive facing closure after franchise termination. The article detailed the financial irregularities, the internal investigation, Vivian's removal. My name was nowhere to be found, as I'd requested. Later, a text from Marcus appeared. I can explain. Please, can we talk? I looked at it, then deleted it. Some bridges are meant to be burned. At my window, the morning sun warmed my grandmother's pendant at my throat. Their empire, built on sand and scorn, was falling. My life, built on my own terms, was just beginning. The Whitmones measured worth in wealth and status. They failed to understand the currency that truly matters: integrity, self-respect, and the quiet knowledge that your character is your own. I finally had my answer. I didn't need their world. I didn't need his love. Knowing who I was had always been enough.